Now it turns out this is monumental. Beforehand, they knew. At what point is it negligence leading to the death of innocent people? So there are actually some deaths that were, again, the standard isn't just, what science was available. It's what science was available at that exact moment in time that you discounted because it didn't serve your narrative. That's when people say, we did the best we could. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You suppressed as much as you could.
Right.
And that's what we call this next story, the tale of the cursed vaccines curse.
Man, long.
So there was a new study, and by new, I mean 2 weeks old.
So dumb.
2 weeks old, and you probably don't know about it. We went through CNN. We could find 0 in its archives. Know what you're thinking? Yeah. Rounding error? No. So the study showed that Pfizer hid nearly 80% of the deaths from its COVID vaccine trials in order to get the emergency use authorization. 80%.
Wow.
Of deaths, 0 media coverage. Specifically, this study found, again, that was accessible and suppressed at that time. The cardiac-related deaths were 3.7 times higher in the vaccinated population than placebo.
Jeez.
And Pfizer delayed the reporting of deaths of the Vax trial, which, quote, again, all references available at LiveEarthCrowder.com. Before you want to ban us here at YouTube, I think we're allowed to talk about this now.
I hope so.
Quote, allowed the Pfizer emergency use authorization to proceed unchallenged. And so the question becomes, and Gerald, you can help explain this a little bit.
Yeah.
How was Pfizer able to delay the reporting of the deaths, right? This is the creative mass. When people say trust the science, right, and I believe that statistics are important, but people said there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. I believe that was Mark Twain. That is when you are dealing with giant government entities, at least partially true, if you can manipulate statistics through these sorts of, tricks is really actually, it's appropriate today, of timing and moving numbers.
And I wonder if they had any financial incentive. Just so you know, Pfizer just reported a third quarter loss of $2.3 billion. Loss, net loss, not profit going down, loss.
I call that the tail of the rhetorical question.
I don't know if I'm shivering because it's so scary or just because it's super cold and I have no clothes on.
It's probably a little bit of both. But look, so what Pfizer did is they used the reported date of death instead of the actual date of death for people. So and that stretched it by up to about 18 days, right?
There's a lag.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And they knew that. But here's the thing.
So like for sort of vaccinated patients, and by the way, you have this, I think you guys can access this. I don't know if it's PubMed or if you have to have I don't know, people need to have a login because we have access to those. But the vaccinated patients, it's 18 days, and the placebo patients, 5 days, as far as how they were measuring, they were reporting the deaths.
The delay. So why would you do that? Why would you change how you report? So that's the big thing. Some people will come out and say, look, the number of deaths wasn't statistically significant. Well, they hit 80% of them, so that's significant. And they also treated their own data differently when it came to something that made them potentially have to explain or look bad and something that didn't. So that's why people are asking these questions and why the media should be digging further into this, because the reported date of death is what they should have been going to, right? So they use that later death, and that allowed them to report most of the deaths.
But isn't there something where legally, if you die, they go, this had nothing, there was a review that says he didn't die from the vaccine, he died from some other cause, right?
So look, it needs to be applied equally to the placebo group and the vaccine group.
That's the whole point of this.
Yes.
It isn't just about the numbers, even though the numbers are pretty staggering. That should make you dig here, basically, right? So you can find out a little bit more about it. But why did they treat the people who were vaccinated differently than the placebo group? And why, if what you said is true, Brian, why would that matter what group you're in? If it takes time to discern a cause of death, then why would it take longer in a placebo group than it would take in a group of people that were vaccinated?
No, it took longer in the vaccinated group. Took longer in the vaccinated group.
No, I'm saying
5 days in the placebo group, 18 days for the vaccinated.
Either way, it should not change.
Right. So let me just read this really quickly, then toss it back to Jill.
Sorry.
By delaying the recording of these patients' deaths, and by not using the actual date of death, this is from the study, this is from the news here, or I guess the new study, I should say, 2 weeks old. It's not really news, but no one else has really covered it. Their deaths were not discoverable at the critical juncture of the emergency use authorization approval process. So this is one of those. Big deal. Yes, this is one of those situations where I had read this a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But what happened is, because we go through news all the time, right? And so I saw the headline and I read it and I go, okay, 3.7 times the death rate. Yeah, the increase in death. And I was thinking, yeah, that's the study that shows the myocarditis in young individuals. I didn't realize that this was a new study specifically relating to the fact, or new data that showed that Pfizer hid the death rate, that they used it, or they used a different standard of death rate for the vaxxed patients versus to get their emergency use authorization. So this is really big. This is about something that we now know definitively took place before you were fed that lie.
Yeah.
Even though it wouldn't be acceptable right afterward, for people to say, hold on a second, if you look at VAERS and you look at there seem to be a lot of adverse effects, and them saying, no, it's fine, we did the best that we could. That was still a problem, but now it turns out this is monumental. Beforehand, they knew. At what point is it negligence leading to the death of innocent people?
Yeah, and by the way, when this was put out, did you hear anything about there being potential for 3.7 times the number of cardiac-related deaths?
No.
For people who... No, you didn't hear any warnings at all from the government. You had nobody telling you that there
I heard it would stop the spread.
Yeah, it would stop the spread. Nobody else would,
It would prevent you from catching
it. So
Yeah.
you know,
There was absolutely no doubt about that.
No.
Correct.
Remember Rachel Maddow? It's very simple.
It
If you take the vaccine and someone has COVID, you can't get COVID. You're talking about a baby
I think it's safe
baby
to
powder
say
shot.
they weren't as sure as they were making themselves out to be, right?
Way,
Like they
way.
weren't close to as sure.
Brian, what they saw was billions of dollars. That is what they saw, and they
Yes.
saw no liability.
And if you
they
raise
saw it right
questions,
now.
you were censored, ladies and gentlemen,
Absolutely.
including scientists who are in the field of immunology
Right.
and vaccinology, which are two words I like to
Let's assume that they started off right with altruistic motives. Let's assume that.
Yeah.
I'm not, but let's assume that. This happened early enough that they should have turned around. They should say, oh, okay.
warned us.
Nowhere else on God's green earth or no other point in history, certainly with modern medicine, I should say. If we're talking about leeches, to suck out the
Yeah,
demons and
it's
stuff,
not
okay,
modern
bloodletting,
so
all that.
much.
I'm talking about modern medicine. Would something like this be foisted upon?
Well, they
the
shut down the
international
economy though. So when you're doing this Operation Warp Speed and you've shut down the world's economy, there's a little bit of pressure on everybody to get this thing out. Couple deaths, that's fine, but we got to get things buzzing.
Yeah, but
Or
they
just
can't-
open
so
up
don't
the
shut down the
economy
economy.
anyway.
Yeah.
Just open it up anyway.
Yeah.
That would have been better.
But if you're
Don't
going to
shut it down.
shut
Some people
down
were
the
doing that.
economy,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so then when they found out, oh, this isn't going how we thought it was, they decided to hide their data. That to me is a crime against humanity. If you want to say that George W. Bush, who they like now, was guilty of war crimes, and of course Barack Obama would be as well, and so would Joe Biden. If you want to say that they are guilty of war crimes, you would certainly have to say that Pfizer, with this new emerging evidence, is guilty of crimes against humanity. And now, of course, to go inside with this data, we have footage of them attempting to hide their data as it was leaked.
The hell is that?
Yeah.
All right. So,
Okay. Oh, again.
stuff.
Sorry.
Gerald, what else do you need to add to this?
So, look, one of the interesting things about this is that they couldn't find any reason for them to have done this. They couldn't come up with any reason for people to go, okay, we're going to have an 18-day lag here and a 5-day lag here. And by the way, after that period of time, after they got their emergency use authorization, they actually changed it back. The lag went away.
This
It's
is
a
from the study.
miracle of science.
Let me read the quote. The length of the reporting delay decreases significantly after the emergency use authorization application is submitted. There is no reasonable explanation for this difference, given that a similar trend is not observed in the placebo subject. So we've said this. You're not a free
clear.
citizen if you live in a country with laws. It's whether you live in a country with laws that are applied equally.
Right.
The same applies to science. And I hope that this opens some eyes here when people say, what are you, a climate denier? Well, hold on a second. Do we run into with a lot of these studies, as it relates to climate science, which they've said, by the way, will be eventually the next COVID, that the left has said, hopefully COVID has taught people that we all can act together, in a monumental way for climate. Well, hold on a second. Let me just give you some very clear examples that everyone will agree on. Was it suppressed at one point in time that batteries were non-recyclable batteries and the mining associated with them was actually really bad for the environment? Was it at one point in time completely discounted that you were a quack if you said, hold on a second, solar panels actually could figuratively, and in many cases are worse for the environment because they require massive amounts of energy to produce, and then they are not effective in producing energy themselves? So if that is something that we can now agree on, because even the left is changing their policy to try and create eco-friendly solar panels. That's the funniest shit I've ever heard in my life. Hey, then maybe do you look at the giant money that's gone into pockets like Solyndra at that point? At some point, do you maybe say, well, if they can't make the electrical cars work in California, maybe that's a tip-off that this isn't necessarily about what's best for the environment? Hey, did a British High Court rule that there were 9 significant errors in the Academy Award-winning documentary An Inconvenient Truth, which, by the way, also related to Al Gore sitting on the board at Apple? What the hell does he do when he's collecting billions of dollars? I'm just saying, if we see this now irrefutably with what happened in COVID, we saw it happen ironically at warp speed. Yeah, I do think there are some things that people want to tell you are settled science that are absolutely not settled science. The more someone says it's settled science, it usually means it's not. Now, I'm not just being simplistic and saying that applies to everything. But for example, when people talk about density, right? When people compare helium to oxygen, they don't have to say it's settled science. It's settled science that helium in a balloon because of it will. Okay, it's set. No, they don't. They just go, look, watch, it's observable. Okay, all right, got it.
Yeah.
You know, someone says that, hey, human beings need a certain mixture, for example, you need a certain level of oxygen to breathe, and you can't get it if you're in water or you'll drown. They don't say, hey, if you go underwater you're going to drown. It's settled science. It's always applied to things that can't be observed necessarily in real time. Now, I understand that the laboratory conditions are required, that more complex science can't necessarily be observed by the human eye. I get that. I understand that. It's not lost on me. But when they tell you something is settled science, the vaccine is settled science, why are you a science denier? Then they tell you, so that's the first thing. If they are shouting it's settled science, that's a lesson I would say. Immediately your antenna should go up, your bullshit meter should go. And if it's combined with large, sweeping, pretty nebulous policy proposals. So in other words, if we have it's settled science, therefore shut down the economy, and everyone needs to get this vaccine from one of 3 companies. By the way, they vary wildly. Some need to be refrigerated, some don't. And we don't necessarily know how it functions. We can't give you an answer, and we can't tell you what. It's settled science, therefore, largest fundamental change to the American way of life that I can remember in our lifetime. Does that apply to, for example, it is settled science, therefore, the Paris Agreement? Before that, it was the Kyoto Protocol. Before that, it was the Montreal Accord, or was it the Montreal Agreement, the Paris Accord? I know it's Kyoto Protocol. Point is, it's the same shit. And by the way, in there, it's settled science, therefore, China's one-child policy. It's settled science, therefore, there are more than 2 genders. How many? We can't answer that. It's infinite. But if it's settled science, don't you have an answer? So when someone screams and silences you saying this is settled science, and it's an appeal to authority fallacy, in combination with huge multi-trillion-dollar policy proposals, usually created in back rooms through international forms of government and committees who don't have any oversight or accountability, that's usually a good sign. Not always. Don't accuse me of being reductive. It's usually a good sign that it's not. It's usually a good sign that maybe it's junk science, that, you know what, you are at least well within your rights to question it. And that's why I call this story the tale of clearly not settled science.
So look, let me just add to that. It's not just settled science because of that, but when you see the mainstream media completely avoiding the topic on settled science and not allowing people to have differing opinions and not at least just searching it out, wouldn't it be great right now for the mainstream media to pick this story up and to tell every single American why it's bogus? And have the facts and lay it out? Wouldn't that be the best thing to do if it really truly is false and is going to lead people astray?
Yeah, we're the people who oppose carrying firearms where they say, if it saves one life!
Right, exactly.
All right.
How
about the 80% of the lives that were lost that were hidden, bitch?
Whenever there's a treaty or an accord, a cottage industry grows up around that. You pass a law, a cottage industry grows up around it. So there's a lot of money invested interest in keeping that settled science
and
settled science.
So being right.
And we want you to run this yourself. So by the way, we could find no reference of it, for example, at CNN or most of the... I hate to use mainstream media because no one watches them, but the legacy media
formerly
outlets,
known as mainstream.
But if you search it right now on Google, we can bring this up. We just did this morning. It says, it looks like the results below are changing quickly. If you search Pfizer and vaccine deaths.
I don't think it's
Search Pfizer and vaccine deaths. Bring that back up. It looks like the results below are changing quickly. How about you show me, I don't know, anything, Google?
Hold on, let me just leave that up for a second. This is what it looks like the results below make us look really bad.
Yes.
So don't click. I don't understand this.
You typed in the "oops, I shat myself" search. We did many Google searches.
Yeah.
So, for example, we had Pfizer hid COVID testing deaths. We ran a search Pfizer COVID vaccine testing deaths. We ran a search 80% of COVID vaccine testing deaths hidden by Pfizer. 0 articles about this study from any quote unquote mainstream media sources. And it was published 2 weeks ago. Again, search yourself, comment below, let us know what it is that you find. This is crowdsourcing.
Well,
please, if you can do it on YouTube, if we're still there, do it there just because there's nothing I like more than to be a pain in Mohan's ass.
That's true. And we like that too. But look, I will defend the mainstream media because they actually do have a lot of very creative reasons for the sudden rise in cardiac deaths among typically pretty healthy people around the world. So
I think that's the tale of the unexplained but settled science, bizarre heart issues.
Such a long time.
I thought we were rolling into a clip, so I had some praise. I guess it's just a collage. Bring up the collage for God's sake.
Hurry, give him some cover.
All right. Can we read these?
Yeah,
We have
let's read
ABC
this.
News: rise in heart disease may be explained by extreme weather conditions. What?
Wow.
Keto diet
Frostbite.
links to higher risk of heart disease. New research shows.
My favorite, in black, solar storms may cause up to 5,500 heart-related deaths in a given year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it says here snow shoveling, which is a euphemism for cocaine.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so there is that.
Video games could trigger deadly heart problems in children.
Wow.
Finds new study.
Yeah, if you get.
Hold on a second. Let me bring this back up. Look at this one. 'cause
leave that up.
Car fumes from exhaust and heavy braking raise risk of heart attack. Study suggests that's not new.
Hold on.
if you wrap your lips around the exhaust of a car, you probably are aiming to go. You're probably trying to punch your ticket.
Yeah. And one thing, a university student dies of joy. Did you see that?
I know, I saw that down at the bottom right.
That's what
Eating same fruit every day
Well-
could increase heart. It's like, hey, hold on a second. You go to your doctor. Like, you go to your doctor. You say, I have stroke face. I have Bell's face. Like, have you changed anything recently? I got injected with multiple experimental mRNA
Yeah.
injections. I don't want to use the term vaccine because it's kind of
Anything
kind of
else you've been doing?
It's like, you haven't been eating apples every
Yeah.
day. I was told I ate one every day. It would keep you away.
Not apples. I eat jelly. That's a fruit.
I ate an apple every day specifically not to see you.
It's a preserve.
A jar of jelly will keep the doctor away.
We have other reasons.
Let me name one. They said taking cold showers that are too cold, but then wait a minute, taking hot showers that are too hot.
No,
Well,
you got a
actually,
Goldilocks. You got to.
Right in the
Pfizer
middle?
says Goldilocks. Baby bear that shit.
So
It's just right. And by the way, also cold porridge will give you heart
Cold porridge,
complications.
yeah,
Cold
that's
porridge.
true.
Everyone
Keto
knows.
diet.
Cold
Thank God, I don't want to be on it anymore.
I'm too shredded.
Gardening.
He died of being shredded.
Gardening.
Gardening.
Daylight savings time.
My favorite, daylight savings
Daylight
time.
savings-
Gardening.
Leads to cardiac issues.
That one we can go with. Here's what you need to know. The mainstream media and a lot of these outlets, they obviously recognize. For example, what is settled is there is a rise in heart complications, in cardiac complications. No one is denying that at this point. Okay, so that's kind of the common ground that we start with. Otherwise, you wouldn't have New Scientist, Daily Mail, Mirror, The Sun, Express, Insider, New York Times, insert Washington Post, insert all the publications here addressing the issue of a staggering number of rising heart complications. And the reason that is really using a scientific method is because we have a comparison, which is all time before COVID and the vaccine. All right, the mRNA injection. So everyone acknowledges that. And then one side says, well, hold on a second. Could we scientifically make the argument that it may have to do with a novel experimental injection that has not been tested or at least put through the same rigors as other approved injections that we basically foisted upon the entire, not just American populace, but the population of the world at large? And the other side says, no, you must be mistaken. The reason we believe, and we all agree, common ground, we can have a civil discussion here on the increase in heart attacks, myocarditis, and other heart-related complications, is you may have people who are taking a shower that might be slightly too hot, slightly too cold. They could be waking up drinking cold water while going out gardening in their backyard, picking fresh herbs, which may lead to them eating the same fruit, my God, every single day. And God forbid that they be joyous or they engage in shoveling snow or through no choice of their own, they happen to go through daylight savings time. We believe that these things obviously lead to increase in myocarditis.
Settled science.
Yes.
Settled science.
Yes.
But how about the fact that you kept people indoors?
Yeah.
And they didn't and you closed down gyms. Does that have anything to do? Your lockdowns have anything to do with the fact that people were sedentary?
No.
Stressed out?
No, it's an apple a day. That's pretty clear. And then you have the media and big tech say, yeah, we'll go with that. So again, I'd love to see you run your searches. At what point do you say, how often do you have to say Alex Jones was right?
Right, yeah.
Seriously, aren't you getting tired of it? At this point, I think everyone has been turned into a conspiracy theorist.
Watch Slider with Crowder live Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.